Right, so next, if you go ahead and find that project folder where that we just created, and then take the elephant geometry that we have sent to you, and then paste that into the geo folder. Okay, I'm going to paste that there. That's a geo file, and then I can hide that. And then let's create a new geometry folder, and I will call this elephant. Dive inside. Let me hide this as well. We don't need to see that. Dive inside. Drop a file. Come to this little box, and then hip geo, and we can find that. Bring it in. Press spacebar and F. View your grid, and you can see here we got 250 meters. So it's kind of a typical thing when bringing in geometry into Houdini. Often the scale is wrong. So Houdini works in meters, whereas a lot of other packages work in centimeters. So a common thing to do is just to drop a transform, and I think if we do that, set the scale to 0.01, should be roughly right. So it's about 3 meters across there. That's okay. Well, 5 meters. So that's fine. So if we take a look at this geometry, you can see that's inside out, but that doesn't really matter. But if we come to the back, I remember, yeah, this tail you can see is hollow. So if you remember, we were talking about making volumes. It's better to have closed, kind of watertight geometry, and we got some weird things. So the tusks there are just kind of penetrating through. So if we drop a polyfill and just connect that up, you see we get an error if we set it to single polygon, or even better, triangles. It should be a bit cleaner, and then that will plug the geometry for us. So we're going to be making a cloud out of this, and handily Houdini have provided a cloud sop. Okay, so we just connect that, visualize that. So straight away you can see we're doing pretty much the same thing. We're generating a volume there, and this is a VDB with density, and we can see the quantity of voxels there. Here we're dividing, so the higher the number here, the more detail we get. It might be worth just kind of dropping a couple of distant lights or something. So come up here to distant light, and just kind of control click on that, and then come back out here. That will create a light from from our point of view, and then you can see we start to get some. Got to see the perspective is orthographic at the moment. I'm going to come to the other side. I don't know, just up here. It doesn't really matter. Don't worry about having the same values as me. This is not going to be for our final render. It's just for while we're working on this cloud. Okay, something like that's fine. Maybe give them a couple of colors. Make one warm and the other one something like that, and the other one blue. Something was nice to do. Like that. Let me just desaturate this. Okay, so we can get a sense with those lights. We'll get a better sense of the details that we're getting from this. Okay, so in the cloud sub, so this will basically convert this into the geometry into a volume. It does have some other options. So here we can multiply the density, make it raise that density value or lower it. We can remap the density if you like. So it's kind of based on the depth. I'm just going to set this back to default. Control Z. Just delete that. There we go. We can also do the scattering of scatter shape. So what this will do is fill it with spheres and start to give you that lumpy, cloudy kind of look. And you got some options for that. So shape size, you might want to make that smaller in this case. But I want to kind of hold that elephant. I want it to look like an elephant at the end. This is going to kind of completely break up the shape. You can add more, this will add another layer of spheres on top again. So I'm not going to use that. I'll be adding noise in a different way. and then you can flatten it as well, which is pretty and cool effect to get. Where is it? You can kind of do some weird kind of stretching stuff. I'm not sure why that's not working. But clouds are often kind of flat on one axis, you know. But again, yeah, we're not going to be using that. So what I will do is use the cloud noise, and I think just connecting that we should get something pretty cool. Now what's really nice about this is doing something that we'll be doing later, but is not such a obviously easy thing to do, which is kind of creating volume where there wasn't any before. Normally when you're adding, you know, working with noises with a volume or a density, you're just kind of working on what's there at the moment. So here we've got values in this area, and you might, you know, lower these values and increase these values. But this is, you can see it's spreading it out, and we're getting lumps kind of sticking out from every side, which is really nice. And obviously the more detail we add here, the more we'll see, you know, we'll change it a little bit. So in the cloud noise, we've got the, you know, your amplitude, how much noise you want to add to this. We've got this spatial scale, which is quite cool. It's kind of, you know, you think about the scale of your object. Is it, you know, a big cloud or a small cloud? So you could play around with that to get it's kind of similar to the element scale, I suppose. I'm going to drop it down 0.5, something like that. And then you got typical noise options here. So octave, you know, layers of noise, element size, how big are the features, element scale, if you want them to be stretched in one direction. You can offset if you want to just kind of move everything along a little bit. And then you got roughness and some other bits and bobs as well. Advection, I don't really use. Noise mask, we're going to be using in a minute. If you want to have less noise in some areas and more in others. So, you know, elements, I'm going to set this up now. So element size, make the pieces a bit bigger, and maybe drop the roughness down. Okay, I'm kind of, you know, I want to move the cloud around, the volume around a little bit, but I don't want to lose that elephant form, that basic elephant form, right? One thing I think we can do, or that I will do, is if you take a look at the tail here and the ears, they're kind of almost being lost, and they're kind of important to illustrate the shape of the elephant, right? So if we come before the cloud, I'm going to drop a sculpt here, visualize that, and sculpt will basically move the points along their normals based on, you know, where you paint these values, right? So if I just come here now, you see you get this cursor. The cursor looks different. If it doesn't, you know, make sure you're in the gizmo, or I think if you press enter, yeah, and then if I click, you'll start to see it's kind of inflating the object there, right? So I'm gonna go back and just do another sculpt. Oh, did I change the values there? No. So drop another sculpt. I want to drop do a really subtle displacement on this. So I'm going to set this to 0.01. Okay, and then I'm going to just kind of come behind the ears here, scroll up on your middle mouse button, and then just kind of inflate the ears out a little. Not too much, but just enough to kind of get a good sense of that density. So if I do that now, you can see hopefully the difference between the two. Okay, and come back and do the same to this ear. A lot of Houdini is on preparing your geometry well, you know, for simulation. Stuff like this is, you know, things, preparing things earlier along in the process is quite important. and can have a big effect kind of down the line, you know. There we go, making the bum a bit bigger there as well, but that's okay. There we go, and the more detail, you know, that should capture this a bit better. Maybe I'll go a bit bigger there at the base. Maybe this kind of bit that flares out. Cool, we can probably push this up a little bit as well. Okay, the higher you go on this, you may see a limit to the resolution in your viewport. You might find that you're raising the resolution here, but you're not seeing more detail. And the reason for that could be if you press D on your keyboard and go into texture, we got this limit resolution for 3D textures, which is what we're seeing here. So you can either raise this up, these values, or something I often do, it is dangerous, you know, because you can crash Houdini, is just turn it off, and then you'll see the full resolution that you have here. Another thing to do, we'll try pushing it. Let me save it first. Maybe if I turn that back on. Okay, sometimes you need to update the viewport whenever you do this, so you just go into another tab to do that. Maybe if I push this up to like 600. Oops. Let's try a bit more. It looks like I'm not. It's still changing a little. 800. Let's try now. So if I press D on my keyboard, turn this off, go into my animation editor and come back. See, that's, you can see the difference now. We've got that super smooth. If I turn it back on, oops, I didn't mean to make a torus. You can see the difference. I just clicked on the torus there. Press escape if you do that. So let's drop this back down. Another thing actually, if you, for the lighting, if you change this to full HDR, that will improve the quality of the lighting somewhat. It's kind of hard to see, but I'm going to turn them back, both of these back on for the moment, and drop this down until we're, you know, refining smaller details, and then, you know, later on we'll turn those back off.